Hey, what's up? I'm Mons. In this video I'll be going in depth on the goddess Tiamat. I'll first be going over what all of her abilities do, as well as how and when you should use them. I want to do that first so that when I get to the items and builds it makes more sense why you should build those items, and at the end I'll go over some useful tips on how to play at various stages in the game and in certain scenarios. If you're just looking for a build guide or a fully fledged build, feel free to skip to these timestamps. Otherwise, enjoy the guide in its entirety. So starting off, Tiamat is a stance switching mage. She has a ground stance which is melee and a flying stance which is ranged, each with different abilities, giving her a total of 10 unique abilities in her kit. Firstly, her passive provides different effects depending on which stance she's in. When in flying stance, she gains healing from nearby god or minion deaths. This includes allies. In ground stance, she gains hardened scales, which are stacks of mitigation that reduce the amount of damage she takes. The scales are lost each time a certain amount of damage is taken. Her first ability in the flying stance is a charged line attack that fires multiple projectiles depending on how long it's charged for. The projectiles go through minions but stop on the first god hit and do less damage for each consecutive hit on the same target. You start the match in flying stance, so this is the ability that you want to level first and max first, as when you get it to ranks 3 and 5 it increases the amount of charges and projectiles that you can shoot. Her first ability in ground stance is a short-ranged cone attack that damages and slows enemies. This ability will consume minions that are below a certain health threshold, and if you use it against a buff camp that is within that consume threshold, you will gain that buff without needing to pick it up, which will let one of your teammates pick up the duplicated buff. Additionally, if you have already picked up a buff and you consume a different buff, then you will be able to have two buffs at the same time. There's also an interaction between this ability and her ultimate that often gets forgotten about. You can consume your spawned minions from your flying stance ult to gain hardened scale stacks. I'll go over what her ultimate and those minions do shortly. Moving on to her second ability in flying stance, it's a triangle shaped ability that has two different areas. The entire area will first do an initial hit of damage, and then shortly after, the inner area will do a second hit of damage and also stun any enemies inside of it. Tiamat's second ability in ground stance is a rectangle that travels forward in sections, knocking up and dealing damage to any enemies that it hits. Okay, we've now reached her third ability, which serves as her stance switch. In flying stance, this ability is a forward leap that does damage and switches her to ground stance, providing her with one hardened scale. When using this ability in ground stance, it deals damage to enemies in front of her and pushes her backwards quickly, swapping her back to flying stance. This is not only a stance switch, but also provides you with two really useful movement abilities, so keep that in mind. Now, last but not least, her ultimate. Her flying stance ultimate has 3 different forms, which all have their own benefits, and are all useful depending on the situation. When you press her ult in flying stance, you'll be able to press your first, second, or third ability afterwards to select which of the 3 ults you want to use, and then place it down on the ground. These all share the same cooldown, so you'll only be able to pick one of the 3 each time you ult in her flying stance. The first form of her ult in flying stance places a pool that spawns 2 small serpents every 10 seconds. If an enemy god stands in the pool for a few seconds, the pool will disappear early. So try to place this under your tower or hidden in the jungle so enemy gods can't get rid of it. These minions are best used to push lanes or help with tower sieges. Tiamat's second ult form places a single large minion that will charge an enemy god if they are in range, damaging them and slowing them. This ult form is best used if you are trying to either chase down an enemy god, slowing them so you can catch up, or if you are trying to stop someone from chasing you, slowing them so you can get away. Note that this brute will not attack minions, buffs, or objectives, so only use this against gods. Her third ult form is a tornado that, after being placed on the ground, targets and chases enemies, damaging them over time before knocking them up at the end. This ult form does the most damage overall and can hit multiple enemies at a time, making it the better option for team fights. It will be harder for enemies to dodge and evade this tornado in a large fight, making it more likely that you'll get the damage and the knock-up off. Generally speaking, the first ult form is best used in laning phase or when sieging towers. The second form is best used against gods only, especially when chasing or escaping, and the third is best used in team fights for extra damage and disrupt. Tiamat's ground stance ultimate is a single ability that deals damage in a large area around her, and also makes her immune to crowd control for a short duration. This ability is great for getting off damage onto multiple targets, and if used correctly can get you out of many dangerous crowd control abilities. That's all her abilities explained. Hopefully you learned something. We're going to go on to the items and builds now. Alright, so we're going to do a quick rundown of what order you should level her abilities in. So you start out the match in range stance, and the first ability you're going to want to level is your 1, because that's your main wave clear, highest damaging ability, and that's the one you're going to max first. So start with the 1, and then we're going to go into the 2 second. If you're versing a high kill potential, high pressure mid and jungle, you might need to get your escape ability second, which is your 3 instead of your 2. But if you think that you can go one more level without your escape, then go for your 2. It'll give you more wave clear and kill potential yourself. And we're going to go into the 3 third, the 1, the ult. Keep leveling your 1, then into your 2, then in your ult whenever you can. So maxing your 1, your ult, and your 2 whenever you can, with your 3 being built last. That's the ability order that we want to go. Try and get your 1 maxed as early as possible, since it does upgrade how many shots it fires. Your ult, of course, whenever you can, and into your 2 and your 3. So prioritize your 1, your 2, then your 3, with your ult whenever you can. Alright, so for building Tiamat, I'll go over the core items and core builds that I usually go in most matches, and then I'll give you some alternative options that you can go and some situational items that you might need to pick up depending on your matchup or the enemy team comp. So starting out, usually I will be going Conduit Gem to start. Some people like Sands of Time into an alternate timeline to be annoying to kill, but I think this works just as well, as it works really well with Tiamat's passive, giving you extra damage reduction. And because he is a stance switcher, this item is great on characters like Tiamat and Merlin, because they spam so many abilities and keep this passive for this item at full stacks. So we'll be starting Conduit Gem, which is a very good starting item, and then we'll be going into tier 1 of Lost Artifact. This is what you're going to be building leaving the base. We'll have 2 health potions, 3 mana potions, and then the relic that you'll be getting will be a beads, most likely, seeing as most support, mid and jungle characters right now have quite a lot of CC that you're going to need the beads out, especially just your mid and jungle matchup will have quite a lot of crowd control that you will need beads for. If they do not, and you feel like you could go an Aegis, then feel free to pick up an Aegis first slot instead, or even some people, including myself, like getting a Heavenly Wings. Shell used to be good, Magic Shell, but they've nerfed that this last patch. They changed how it works, so I wouldn't pick that up right now, but that could change in the future. As of now, I'd pick any 2 of these 3 relics, depending on what the enemy team is. This is what you're going to leave the base with. Let's say we pick beads. You're going to leave the base with Conduit Gem, Lost Artifact, 2 health potions, 3 mana potions, and your relic. That is what you'll be leaving the base with. Now, when you have got some gold and you're back, you're going to want to pick up Shoes of the Magi, finish that before you upgrade your Lost Artifact, and then turn your Lost Artifact into a Chronos Pendant. So these are your first 3 items that you're going to have. Chronos Pendant, very good on Tiamat. The passive reducing 1 second from all your abilities on cooldown works no matter what stance you're in. So if you use all your abilities and you swap stance and then use all those abilities, it'll reduce the cooldown using this passive for all your abilities, including the ones in the opposite stance. So this is very good. You get very, very good value out of this item on Tiamat. And Shoes of the Magi, because we're going to be building full CDR in our build, in our main build, we're not going to need Shoes of Focus, which will give CDR, so we're going to go Shoes of the Magi, which is a very good pickup right now. 4th item, we're going to be going Spear of Desolation. Now, this item is also very good on Tiamat. The passive, just like Chronos Pendant, is very valuable on Tiamat. If you get a kill or assist in the fight, your cooldowns are going to be heavily reduced, so this item is very, very valuable on a character like Tiamat that has so many different abilities. Plus, just the base stats on alone are incredible. Now, next item is going to be Soul Gem. This item is, once again, very good on Tiamat, very good for most mages right now, just a very good item in general. As you can probably tell by these 3 items, one of the best stats, if not the best stat on Tiamat to get, is cooldown reduction. All these 3 items have cooldown reduction, and you want to be having a lot of CDR on a stance switcher like Tiamat to have your abilities up as much as you can, because that is what will make you so oppressing to the enemy team. So next we're going to be going the old Rod of Tahuti, which is staple item for mages, has been for a very long time, and this will be your 6 items in your build. Once you get to level 20, you can upgrade your Conduit Gem to a Gem of Focus. Very good item on Tiamat, as I said. The passive is amazing. Having the damage taken reduction from Gem of Focus that stacks up to 3 times, plus Tiamat's ground stance damage mitigations, makes him quite hard to kill compared to other mages. So this is the core build that I would go. Get an Aegis here or a Heavenly Wings. I usually get Beads and Aegis, and we're going to build these 6 items. Now, some situational items. I'll go over them in a second. First of all, I want to say, if you get to crazy late game and you are able to buy an Elixir of Speed, then you can sell your boots and pick up a Spear of the Magus. I would sell your boots for Spear of the Magus on Tiamat. This item just got buffed recently, giving it 12% extra lifesteal. So very good item, especially on Tiamat when you have abilities like his ground stance ultimate that can proc this on gods very, very easily. So very valuable item on a god like Tiamat. Goddess like Tiamat, excuse me. Now, some situational items. These are very important because you can go this build every game and sure, it'll work, sure, it'll be fine. But there'll be certain games where you'll need to build different items depending on the enemy matchup. If they have a lot of healing, say they have Guan Yu, Yemoja, Aphrodite, any of these kinds of characters, Ra, Chang'e, even if they have characters that are just building a lot of healing items like Solar Eater, you will need to probably get a Divine Ruin unless you feel comfortable not getting it and your teammates will get the anti-heal. But I would pick up a Divine Ruin if you need to rush it. Put it where Chronos Pendant is. Start with Conduit Gem and Divine Ruin tier 1 at the start with 1 of each potion. That's a fine start to go if you need to rush the anti-heal. Otherwise, if you need to fit this in your build, I would fit it either here and then put Spirit Desolation here, or where Soul Gem is. I would replace Soul Gem with Divine Ruin. You definitely want Spirit Desolation and Chronos Pendant on Tiamat because those passives are extremely good on Tiamat. Soul Gem is a very good item, however, Chronos Pendant and Spirit Desolation, personally, I would prefer to have those 2 items over a Soul Gem. Definitely Spirit Desolation, I would keep in there. That item is crazy in a team fight if you get some kills. That's how you snowball hard in a team fight. So that'll be if you need anti-heal. Another item that you may need to consider picking up is a Soul Reaver or an Ethereal Staff, depending on your preference. If they have a lot of health, you need an item that can chunk down their health. This item is pretty good on Tiamat because you have so many abilities to proc it with. Any person that you hit, it'll do health-based damage, depending on how much health they have. So if they've stacked a lot of health and they've got too much health for you to shred through with just this build, you'll probably need to pick this up to deal with that. As I said, you could also get an Ethereal Staff if you would prefer to get that instead of Soul Reaver. Another good item that you could get could be a Karen's Coin if you need a little bit more penetration. This gives 20% magic penetration, and it's a very good utility item. It gives a lot of regeneration and its passive is quite useful. If you get this, I would probably fit it in where Chronos Pendant is and then build these items a bit later, or fit this in here somewhere. Probably swapping out a Soul Gem for an item like this once again. Another decent item that you could get could be something like a Typhon's Fang if you want some lifesteal, or you could go for a bit of utility, a Gem of Isolation. I don't personally build this, but it could be a decent item on Tiamat if that's what you're looking for, if you think you could punish people with some slows. So they're the kinds of situational items I would get. One last thing is defensive items. Mantle of Discord. This item, if you end up selling your shoes, if you don't want to pick up Spirit of the Magus, and you need a little bit more survivability if you're getting blown up in fights, pick up a Mantle of Discord when you sell your boots if the game goes that late, or pick it up a little bit earlier, like a second last item. But I wouldn't build it very early. I'd get it definitely late game. If I would build this, I would definitely trade my boots for it late game. But if you're doing fine, if you don't think you're needing too much more survivability, pick up a Spirit of Magus and you'll be chunking people. So those would be the situational items I would go. They have healing, Divine Ruin, they have a lot of health, Soul Reaver, they have a lot of protections, and you want some utility, get a Karen's coin. It's an all-round very good item. I prefer this on other mages than Tiamat though. Tiamat, I prefer these kinds of items, and Mantle of Discord, sell your shoes for it if you need a bit more survivability late game. Otherwise, pick up a Spirit of the Magus. But this is the core build. I would go these items almost every game, unless you need to pick up these things. So yeah, hope that helps a little bit with the build. The key things to note is basically cooldown reduction, stack cooldown reduction. It's crazy on Tiamat. Just get a whole bunch of cooldown reduction and a whole bunch of power, and you're going to be hard to kill with this item and your passive. That should be enough survivability for people to not be able to kill you as easily as other mages. So sometimes that can be what makes and breaks a fight, is people are often so used to killing other mages so quickly that when you swap into ground stance and you get that mitigation and you've got full stacks on your gem of focus, you're not as easy to kill as other mages are in the game. So junglers, solo laners, when they're diving you, they're gonna take a little bit longer than they used to kill you. So use that to your advantage and try to turn the fight on them, try and take all their abilities without dying, and then your team can turn the fight, keep you alive, and use that to your advantage. I'll show you some clips in a minute of some big team fights breaking out, some tips and tricks, and how to use this build to your advantage, and how to play this goddess, because she is a lot of fun and she is very, very, very strong. Right, I'm going to go over a few little tips for Tiamat now. Just something to note for our first ability in flying stance is when you fully charge it, you can fire it early while still having it fully charged. If you listen to the audio cue and time it right, you can fire it early so people can't escape as easy. Also, this ability, as well as many of her other abilities, can go over or through walls, so use that to your advantage. When invading the enemy jungle, use her first ability in ground stance to your advantage. It will consume minions, so use that to get the last hit on buff camps, as it's much better secure than other abilities. If you're backing or leaving your lane, try to put down your first form of your flight stance ultimate. That way you can get credit for minions when you're not even there, and it will help push your farm and weaken the enemy towers, forcing someone to have to rotate to try and stop it. In this clip, I get dove by 4 people at the same time, so I'm 1v4 as a squishy mage early game. And what I did is I swapped to ground stance, which gave me my passive stacks, and I hit as many people as I could, and that kept me alive. Using my Aegis, my knock up, and trying to just dodge abilities combined with my mitigation, it was insane how tanky I was in that fight. They used so many ults on me and could not kill me, so use your passive to your advantage. If you get in a pickle, swap to ground stance and it might keep you alive. Very big minion. This is the final clip I wanted to show, just to highlight how good Tiamat's self-peel is. In this fight we secure the fire giant, but then I get dove by a Gilgamesh when I'm low health. I was almost dead here, but using the mitigation stacks from ground stance, as well as the cooldown reduction that we had from all of our items, we were able to continue dashing away, knocking him up, slowing him with our ultimate, and peeling for ourselves so we could get out of that fight, while our team won the fight while he was distracted trying to chase me. So use peel for yourself, use your dashes to get away, and you can get out of some very sticky situations. Alright, that's going to be the end of this guide. I hope you learn a little bit about Tiamat. She's actually really fun and I'm enjoying her more and more. Feel free to comment on what you liked and disliked, or what you agreed and disagreed on, or if there's any improvements I can make for another guide, or which god you'd like a guide of next if you enjoyed this one. For now, that will be it there. I'm going to close this out with a little clip of my Tiamat pentakill. I hope you enjoy, and thank you for watching.
The marks of the trip.
PogChamp Yakers.
Imagine being and supporting
Okay,
the touches.
Immortal.
Get it?
One by one until
Hell yeah.
Tiamat Penta.